What's up guys, this is Jimmy Duraide from the BTS Lab. Today I'll be making a second video for the Moving Up series, applying what we learned. Today I'll be playing some 10 NL Zoom with the NT now. At this moment the pool is about 400, let me just check it out, it's about 450 people, so it's quite a big pool. I will not be using a HUD because it's pretty much useless in the sense that I don't have any stats on anybody, and also the pool is so big that it would take a lot of time to have a meaningful sample. So basically how I'm gonna approach these games is just on the fact, on my knowledge of the population, of the general population tendencies, as there will be overfolding their blinds, under 3-betting, under 4-betting. So we're gonna have to be a bit more careful about aggression. We're gonna try to open wider as well from later position. Also, you guys are gonna see that I will be adjusting my opening raise sizes because of the ante. So instead of going 2.2x from under the gun, I will be going to slightly bigger sizing, somewhere like 2.5x. And then on the button, instead of going 2.5, I'm going to be looking to open something like 3x and then something like 3.5x in the small blind versus big blind. So without waiting any further, let's get into the action. This is quite a close, this would be the bottom of our opening range here. I think that with the antes, people being a bit on the near side, there's more money to go after. I'm going to be opening it here. If I have more read that this guy is pretty aggressive, or this guy or whatever on the button especially, then I would be definitely folding and opening something like ace-9 or ace-8 off plus. I'm going to complete here versus a limp. Pretty easy fold, and then we're going to fold here. We're also going to take a look into the pre-flop sizings that people are using, and yeah. This is a spot where we're going to be c-betting at a high frequency. Also, I think we have to take account that people, when we size up, to 3.1 or 3.5 from the small blind, people will be calling a tighter range. So we have to be a bit more careful post flop. But I still think that here, it's a turn that having an 8 is not great. I would definitely be barreling a hand like ace-9 for sure, blocking 9-10 and ace-10. Now here, I'm just going to check this time. We could barrel here. I would prefer having a diamond, obviously, and having ace-9 with a diamond. I think it's would be one of the best combos to actually bluff. Here, I'm just going to fold. He bets pretty big. King 8 suited, it would be an open if the big blind was a fish. But I have no stats. There's 2 short stacks, so there's more chance that we're going to get cold called in position, which is not great. So I wouldn't want to be opening much wider. So we're going to try to talk about like all the stuff that we learned since the beginning, from pre-flop to the c-bet on the flop, to trying to exploit players' tendencies. And again here, I'm just going to c-bet my entire range. We put like his middling pair into a tough spot. So he calls quickly. Again, like we have no equity here. We're gonna have much better hands to actually start to turn into bluff. We're gonna have plenty of natural bluffs as well. If we start battling these type of hands, I think we're gonna be overdoing it. 9-6 off is just a bit too weak. Early blocks, especially like when you're facing a block here, this is super face up as to a medium strength hand, so like we cannot go crazy with bluff catching really wide here, because I think like if he were to bluff, it would actually size up a bit, and then it's not like he's betting his range with that sizing. So most players at lower stakes, what they do is that they actually play their hand. So like whenever he has a medium strength hand, for example, like he's gonna be betting that sizing. If he has a king or trips or better, then he would be betting bigger, and if he was bluffing, he would be betting bigger, and all that type of stuff. So this is kind of like the assumption I get from the people at lower stakes, is that they don't really think about their ranges. They just say, okay, my hand wants to bet this sizing or that sizing. Here we can 3-bet or call. So we have to be really careful about when we're facing some smaller bet like that, because their range is pretty face up. So we either have to fold a bit more, our bluff catchers, and then start raising that. But I didn't think in that spot it was actually made a lot of sense to raise there, as I don't think I'm going to be making him fold the jack or something. Here I'm going to go for value. Again, we're going to be playing a bit more exploitatively, in the sense that like we have no idea of the players, and also like there's 450 people in the pool, like, so the chances are that like they actually get what we are doing is super small, because by the time that we get the same situation, like in the same positions and the same type of board texture, it might take a few weeks, you know, because the pool is so big. Here I'm just gonna check back, and then I'm gonna be bluffing the river if he doesn't bet. We can make a hand like 8x or 4x fold on the river for sure. We will still have some good hands like a king. We're gonna make some 2-pair as well on the river. This is just a fold. We could potentially raise versus a smaller sizing, but again, they're a bit face up. King 5 off, I mean, it's pretty close. Again, like I'm gonna be opening a bit wider here, just because there's a bit more money to go after, and people are not that aggressive. So this would be a pretty easy fold at higher stakes. I'm gonna be betting my entire range here. Bring it down a bit wider. He's gonna have to check raise quite a lot. Like on these boards, like the paired boards, once we start c-betting range there, he needs to check raise something like 35 or 40% even. So this is one of the reasons why it's actually good doing that, because nobody is ever doing that. So we get to see more turns, we get to realize a bit more equity and all that type of stuff. Because people like even like a pretty aggressive regular will check raise maybe like 15-20% there. Ace 9-7, I'm not going to be c-betting my entire range here. The 9 and the 7 connects well with his range. Should be a bit stronger as well, since it's middle position versus big blind. So I'll be using like a polarized strategy here with a bigger bet size. If I had a hand like 7-8 of spade, for example, we can start turning maybe some hands into a bluff with better backdoors. Here, since we don't have the backdoor flush draw, I don't mind checking back. I'm definitely calling here versus I can have hands like Jack 10 and he can bet. So now he pots it. I mean, it's pretty easy fold. Like we cannot fold a turn here with a pair and a gutter. He also will give up sometimes on the river. Also, I feel that like pot size bets are really geared towards value, as like if they bet big, a lot of the times, like if they were bluffing, they would bet a bit bigger than that. And then if they have like a weaker hand, they would, again, I'm still going to be calling versus a 1/3 here. When they bet pot, I feel like they have a pretty strong range. It's like I have a strong hand, but I don't want to be betting too big to actually scare you away. So I don't want to be over betting, but so I'm using something close to pot. So we're just gonna check here. Okay. I mean, again, this is just my assumption. I don't have. I haven't taken a look into a bigger sample. But it's just my opinion on especially playing especially at higher stakes and all that. Just a feeling that I got from the population. Here, I mean, again, for a min raise, like those hands play pretty bad, but we're getting a decent price. Like hands like King 6 off, I would definitely fold. Again, this is why it's so bad, and I should have probably just folded pre-flop, to be honest. Like we would prefer much more like a hand like 10-6 suited. At least we can pick up some equity with flush draws and all that. Like here, we're 4-way, we flop top pair, which is pretty much one of the best case scenario that we're gonna get. And he's betting into 3 people. We don't even have backdoor flush draw. I'm just gonna fold like exploitatively, but that means that I should probably just fold pre-flop for sure. We're going to 3-bet the Queen Jack suited. And again, Ace-6 off. He seems like a weaker player with a broken stack here, so I'm definitely going to open. I'm going to be opening up my range here because I want to be playing against the big blind. We're going to 3-bet. Against a 4-bet instant fold, those offsuit broadways plays really bad, especially out of position. Also, we're gonna have to be overfolding versus his 4-bet because he's nowhere close to be bluffing optimally. So we're gonna have to overfold versus his 4-bet, and then the offsuit broadways just plays super bad. They're dominated. They're offsuited. Okay, so we get cold called. Okay. So, I mean, I'm going to be betting here. If I had a hand like kings, I would definitely check. We're 3-way, so I'm not going to be betting my entire range. But here, 9s is still vulnerable. You can still have worse pocket pairs as well as hands like king, queen suited. So I'm just going to bet here for protection. If I had a hand like pocket kings, I would definitely check. This guy's going to have a bunch of ace-6s as well. So, like, once he calls, I mean, like, I'm not putting any more money here. Even the bet on the flop is pretty close, but I still think that it's okay. I would much prefer doing it with 10s and jacks because at least we dominate some of his, a bit more of his pocket pair. Like, this guy has an ace pretty much all the time. Like, I don't like this sizing as well. I mean, like, he's looking to get called by what? Like, okay, that's ridiculous by him. What did he have? Pocket. Okay, so the other guy had pocket jacks. Okay, so we 3-bet. He called. This is not a board that we're gonna be betting at a high frequency. I'm going to be sizing up a bit. I don't want to be sizing up too much. Here 10-6 suited, I'm just going to fold versus a 3x. Now, I don't want to be betting like 3/4 pot, but something like half pot when I size up with a polarized range is totally fine. There are also some spots where we can see bet our entire range for half pot sizing. We can be talking about that in later coachings. But especially in tight ranges situations, the 1/3 on a lot of boards is not that effective anymore. Because when it's tight range versus tight range, when you take a look at this board, like what does he have that actually misses this board, except maybe a hand like ace queen or ace king? You know, everything else connects with the board, so it's not like we can just bet 1/3 pot and get rid of him easily. So we see that a lot of people are opening 3x, so they seem to have adjusted to the antes. I still think that under the gun and middle position, we can go 2.5. Again, the same logic that we talked about applies in the sense that we are early position. We don't want to be building a huge pot. So opening less than 3x, I think, kind of makes sense. If you want to open 3x and just tighten up a bit your range, I think that's also fine. So we can open, I don't know, like 15, 16%, and then just, here I'm just gonna bet half pot. So I mean, I'm gonna be playing my hand. This guy limp called. He makes it so small, but this hand plays super bad. Like if I had any suited hand, like I would definitely call, but like, or any pocket pair. But like with this hand, I mean, it's quite close, to be honest. I'm just gonna fold. Squeeze here. I mean, I think we could have called. I think folding is fine as well. I think both options are viable. If I had a bit better hand, then I would have definitely called. Offsuit Broadway just plays bad in tight range of spot. But again, like he min raises is clearly a weaker player, so he could be doing that with like ace deuce off, you know. We have no clue. Earlier when I was playing, I saw some people open raising like 10x with 10-9 suited under the gun. So we definitely see some weird stuff in those games for sure. Again, 9-4 suited. If I had 9-5, 9-6, I would definitely call. Queen 10 off, I'm gonna open. He has a broken stack in the big blind, so I'm looking to play against this guy. I'll be checking. So out of position when we're three-way, like we're gonna have to do a bunch of checking in general. This hand would definitely like to bet, but we can do a bunch of stuff. So a lot of our range, actually, if he was a clear like recreational and pretty weak guy, then I would bet myself, because if this guy's a regular and he knows this guy is a weaker player, then his tabbing range is not gonna be that wide. So I prefer taking the matters into my own hands and just bet myself my really strong hands, because I don't expect this guy to be betting at a high frequency. Here we can do both check raise or check call. I would prefer check raising with the backdoor flush draw. We always try to build a bigger pot with the hands that needs a bit more equity, that have a bit more equity. So hands like Queen 10 with the backdoor flush draw would be better raised than Queen 10 off here. Okay, so here I'm just gonna fold. I'm still gonna call. Still gonna call here. We have 1 over, we're open-ended. It's not great, but yeah. Also, there are some spots where I want to be talking about timing tells because I see that quite a lot. In spots that you guys are doing like a lot of range betting, you know, so you 3-bet ace, 8 deuce, you know that you're going to be range betting there because you know your strategy well. Just snap betting is totally fine. But then on turn where you're going to polarize yourself, or here, like if I want to turn a hand into a bluff, I need to be thinking about it, right? So like if you just snap, check, shove, like it just looks super strong. So if I want to be turning a hand like 9-10 into a bluff or something like that, I will have to be thinking about it. So make sure that like in spots where you are doing a lot of range betting on the flop, for example, snap betting is totally fine. But then on the turn, once you're going to have to polarize yourself, and you're going to have to think about like, what hands do I need to be betting as a bluff? What hands do I need to be betting for value and all that? Then make sure that you take a bit of time to actually make your decision. Even if your decision is pretty easy and you have like a set or you have like a strong draw or something, make sure that you are actually taking some time. Like just not check shoving on the river here, like, I mean, it just signifies so much strength. Like if I have a hand like 9-10, I'm going to have to think about it if I'm going to be... Okay, so he dunks half pot. Like I'm going to be folding hands like King Queen, King Jack, you know, that doesn't have, like, at least we have some backdoor straight draws. So I'm going to be calling here. Queen high, we win at showdown like 25% of the time. There's no need to be turning. Like he's gonna have hands like fours that he's gonna check back. Here I'm just gonna call. 7, it's fine. Quite interesting. I don't see him having a lot of King X. We don't block any like A6, A7 that he can have. It's not great, but I don't think I'm going to be folding here. If he made it pot size bet, I would probably fold. But again, like against these guys, folding is probably better, but I don't think in this situation I'll be folding. Yeah. So of course it's gonna have those type of hands sometimes. Also, like when they have really value, like a lot of the times, they're just gonna be like looking to check and not really donk a set or like a straight here. Okay, so here I 3-bet, he called. The board is 5-4-4. It's a great board for us. The 4 is pretty irrelevant, but the big part of our range wants to actually size up. So those are not the boards that we can just go 1/3 here, because a lot of like, I'll just sit out and talk about it because this will be a subject for the future months as well. But here, again, let's say we 3-bet pocket 9s or pocket 8s plus or something like that. Or, I mean, we can take the same situation versus the button where we have a wider range. So, and we 3-bet maybe something like pocket 8s plus. Like on those boards, like, they're really good for us in the sense that like the 4 is pretty irrelevant. We're going to have some like 4 or 5 suited, but that's only one combo. But we're going to have hands like ace 4 suited, which is again only 2 combos. We don't really have 5s, which he's going to have, but that's just a small part. We're going to have a whole bunch of like pocket 8 through pocket aces. And a bunch of those like pocket 8 through pocket jacks or queens really want to be, or if you have a hand like ace 5, for example, or 5-6 suited, like those hands really want to deny equity on the flop. So going for a 1/3 pot, I mean, especially in tight ranges scenario where you don't really put him in a tough spot, I mean, you see that solver actually starts to size up, and sizing that is used quite often is something like half pot. So there's a lot of spots, like let's say you take a look, small blind versus button, 3-bet, and then the board is, I don't know, like 10, 5, deuce. It's a great board for small blind 3-betting range, but you could see that like it's actually c-betting its entire range, but for a half pot sizing, because a big part of your range wants to deny equity right now. And yes, it's not really the same case when the board is high. So when the board is like ace, 8, deuce, rainbow, the equities are a lot more locked down. So what I mean by that, it's either you're going to have a really strong hand and you're going to have a hand like ace jack on ace 8 deuce, which is a strong top pair, or you're going to have a hand that is way behind. For example, king queen suited or pocket 9s, which is drawing to 2 outs, or king queen suited, which is drawing to runner. So the equities on a board like ace 8 deuce is a lot more stable. So we don't mind, even though we have a range advantage, we want to be betting aggressively, so we don't mind going for a smaller sizing. But on a board like 10-5 deuce, for example, We still have a range advantage because, I mean, you see that solver's betting like 80, 90% or 95% of the time, but there's a shift in the sizing where instead of betting something like 1/3 pot, it's starting to shift towards more like half pot. Because again, the equities are not as stable on the 10-5-4. There's going to be overcard that will come, you know. So a big part of your range actually wants to deny equity right now and deny and protect a bit more on these type of board. So let's continue. I'm going to fold. We're going to open here. So again, once we open 3.5 or 3.3 or something like that, I would be a bit more cautious when facing 3-bets. As people ranges will be a bit tighter because they're going to be a bit more scared of the really big sizing. So once you get 3-bet, I think that we have to be slightly more careful. So like the borderline hands you would call versus like your regular standard size, you can actually start folding. You shouldn't really cold call here. Once he cold calls, like he's gonna have a bunch of like small pairs and some suited stuff, especially when the sizing is super small. I'm not gonna be betting here. I think we have some showdown value. It would be pretty horrible to actually get check jammed on. It smashes his calling range, like especially like he's gonna have hands like he's gonna have a bunch of hands that connects with this board, and we're not folding. It's a really bad river. If he bets here, I'm just gonna be folding. If he bets one big blind, I'm calling. Yeah. Sorry about that. That's again like one big blind. I mean, I'm not folding. He can have a hand like ace 5. He can have a hand like ace king, or he can have a hand like ace jack or jack 7 suited. Yeah. So I mean, we can clearly label him as a whale, which is great. On the turn here, I was occupied with the 4-bet pot, but I definitely think that we should be betting turn and with the ace of diamond to actually, I'm going to be betting here. I missed out. Yeah, I think on the river, it's a pretty clear bet here. And ace deuce wins, which is gross. Ace deuce off, I'm going to fold. I'm just going to reload to have some time bank. Yeah, I think that we should be betting the turn for sure, and then bluffing on diamond rivers. And then on the river, like not a lot of people have the 5. We have a bunch of 5x in our range because we called in the big blind. So I think that betting on the river is mandatory before you get timed out, obviously. Jack, we're going to fold. Deuces, we're going to open. Hopefully strategy is not based on super system because that's a bit outdated, but it's still a good book for starters. I'm gonna open that. I'm gonna be betting here, and then if he calls, I'm potentially looking to turn this hand into a bluff because we have bottom pair, so we block some sets, but we also have the ace of diamonds, and we block some 2-pair combos, so we can start putting a bit more pressure, but of course the deuce is a bit irrelevant. I'm not gonna do that with every bottom pair, but sometimes, like turning some bottom pair into a bluff, we can definitely do that. Here I've had a bit more reads on this guy and I have some stats. I mean, I could 3-bet to isolate him, but I have no idea. I have him labeled as a recreational, but maybe that's a misclick as well. Okay, this is not great. I'm just gonna call 4-bet small and call it off for 40 bigs here. Again, exploitatively here, I'm just gonna open 2.5 with aces. Nobody will never know that. But again, I really want to make sure that like I don't want to be betting like 3.1 or 3.5. But again, like this is just exploitatively, and again the pool is so big that like nobody will never notice that. Like blind versus blind, I would definitely open to something like here. I think this is quite close versus a 3x. I mean, 10-9 off. Like even like if it was just a bit less coordinated, I would definitely. If it was like 10-8 off, I mean it's a clear fold. 10-9 off, I think it's right on the borderline. Here I want to be betting, like I don't want to be checking. Both look like recreational, equal call the 3-bet. If he has 10s, I want to be betting and putting some money in. Again, I don't want to be calling and just let him realize all of his equities. If he has I'm just gonna re-raise small. Like I don't like calling. You know what? I'm just gonna be calling. We have the king of clubs. We want this guy in the pot as well. I'm gonna be checking here. One of the reasons I actually checked here is that on the flop, he actually bet really big. That means that, like, my opinion is that he's gonna have a piece of the board. So when he checks back, it's potentially for pot control, and I'm just gonna looking to check jam. Especially here, we block the 9, we block the 10, which is not great. Like if he went 1/3 pot on the flop and then checks back turn, I think his range gonna contain less medium strength hands. So he's gonna be like give ups and all that. But once he bets really, I mean, he bet pretty big on the flop. So I think that he's gonna have hands like this, which is great. I mean, I'm surprised that he didn't jam the river. He only lose to 9-10. But on the flop, let me just check. He bet something like 3/4 spot or something. So yeah, he bets 2/3 spot. So I mean, again with that sizing, I think like he's gonna have a piece of it, like a pair or something, and then on the turn it's for pot control. So on the river, I don't mind just going for a check raise, because also we block the 9, we block the 10. We're getting max value if he ever has a pair or something. Here I'm not going to be betting my entire range, but I'm going to be betting this combo. We have backdoor flush draw, backdoor straight draw. So the 9 and the 10 connects really well with his strong range. As in the big blind, he's going to have a much tighter range than on the button. So it's not a board that we can just blindly and c-bet any two. Against people that you know are a bit on the needier side and doesn't check raise, overfold versus c-bet, I mean, I wouldn't mind if you just go with a 1/3 full range strategy there. I think c-betting a bit too aggressively in those games is better than not being aggressive enough. So if you tell me, okay, I prefer being on the more aggressive side, I think that makes a lot of sense. Again, I'm just gonna close it, open another one. when we are in position with wide ranges, I don't mind going for 1/3. If I was, for example, big blind or small blind versus button or cutoff, this would be a spot where I would go with a half pot full range. But against blind versus blind, I don't mind going for a smaller sizing in position. If the board was a bit more connected, like 10-7-5, 10-7-4, then I'm not going to be folding here. It's going to be calling. We can definitely be ahead here. Shouldn't have much deuce X in his range. Like, obviously, he's going to have hands like pocket eights that he's just like, okay, he's just going to check back his air, so I want to be donking. You shouldn't really donk on a turn card like this, to be honest. But yeah. So I expect these type of hands to be in his range. Like his bet, like he's gonna have, like I said, sometimes like hands like pocket eights or 9x that he's like, okay, I don't want him to check back, you know, it's a pretty good turn for my range, as it doesn't connect with all my overcards that I'm c-betting. So if he thinks that like I'm just checking back and never bluffing, you know, I will get to realize all of my equity by just checking back the turn with my overcards. But I still don't think it's a thing, and I still wouldn't advise you guys to actually do that. There's some dunking in some situation, but it's mostly when it connects, like when the turn connects with, like, better with the donker's range, for example. But like the deuce is irrelevant for him and for me, so it's not like it's really helping him. Like, I mean, my pocket tens or ace 9 plus, it's still super happy to actually put in money there. I'm not looking to barrel here. Having clubs is not great because we're gonna block some floats, like if he has a hand like ace 5 of clubs, ace 9 of clubs, this type of stuff with the backdoor flush draw. And we have to be cautious since we're going to be opening wide. We cannot go crazy by just barreling every turn with a gut shot. It's a spot as well where if we bet the turn, let's say with a hand like ace 9, we would have to be barreling the river at a high frequency. So it's not a spot where it works well to be betting turn and then giving up river, because he's going to have a bunch of like king jack, jack 10, jack 9, jack 9 is a straight, but like queen jack type of hand that will call the turn, but will have a tough time calling river. So once we start betting the turn with our bluffs, we have to be barreling the river. So we have to be barreling the river. So don't expect a lot of fold equity on the turn, but we can expect some fold equity on the river. So if your strategy is to bet flop and turn aggressively and then give up after getting called, you're just burning money, because his calling range on the turn, like, is not gonna change all that much from the flop. Like if he has a pair plus open-ended straight draw, do you really expect him to fold that on the turn? No. But we can definitely make a hand like 10x or queen x fold on the river. Pretty close. We could have opened there. Against a small blind cold call, his range is, I mean, he's a weaker player, so it's kind of like you shouldn't really cold call there. So it's hard to say, but usually their range is pretty condensed to something like small pocket pairs, some suited broadways, even a hand like ace queen off type of hand. I'm gonna bet small since there's 2 flush draws, just to deny equity and play a bit my hand face up. I'm gonna fold ace 9 and then we just check. King 7. I mean, we should not have that, but that's totally fine. That's what you want, basically. That he calls there. We're gonna ISO. Gonna open. So again, we're facing a cold call here. We could do both strategies. We could check. We could bet. Again, when we're out of position, we're gonna do a lot of checking, but it's still a super good board for us. So on this specific board, like I'm gonna be c-betting. if the board was like king 9-8, like I would definitely probably just check my entire range there, unless I mean he's a confirmed recreational. Okay, so he just snap checks back. Like he never like maybe he has a random ace of club like jack off or something like that. But I mean once he snap checks back, I mean it's like he's usually pretty weak. Then it's suited, we're just going to fold out of position versus 3 bets out of position. We're going to be playing pretty tight. Especially like I see that from those games, the sizing that they actually use like is quite ridiculous. So let's say you open like 2.5x and then they're from the cutoff and then on the button they 3-bet to like 10.5 or 11. You know, so it's like... really. And against the bigger sizing, we already talked about that, but like the bigger the sizing, the less we're going to be calling and the more we're going to be 4-betting. So at some point, we don't even have a calling range, you know, we just 4-bet or fold, which makes our life super easy. We're going to ISO here. Okay, pretty interesting hand, pretty interesting board. Again, like this would be a pretty cool hand to actually check back, but I want to be betting, especially given the fact that I'm playing a bit lower. People will be more face up, so I definitely want to be betting here for protection. If I get raised, I mean, like we can definitely. I mean, just reevaluate. But again, now it just calls. Like I'm just looking to I'm not looking to protect my range. I'm just looking to bet big, get max value, and then looking to check back the river. Yep. In some games, you know, you could actually, the kings needs less protection than a hand like pocket 10, so you know we can just start c-betting tens more. But I still think that we can play a bit more face up at these stakes because first of all the player pool is so big. Like this situation with the limp, we ISO from the button, the small blind calls, this board texture, we're 300 deep. Like it's just never gonna happen within like the next month. So even like if you play your hand, I mean, that's totally fine, but we want to learn like a good and solid default strategy that we have to adjust in game. And then we take a look into villain and we play exploitatively. So at lower stakes, you might not use the default strategy that we talk about a whole lot, you know, but that's totally fine as long as you put in some work and you know that you need to deviate at those stakes. And then once you're going to be moving up, it's going to be more and more useful. I'm just going to fold versus the pot size bet here. Again, it makes our life pretty easy. So we see a lot of donking. I'm going to be calling here with the backdoor flush draw, 2 overs, some backdoor straight draw as well. Against another donk, I'm just going to be folding. Again, this is a fold usually, but I'm going to be playing a bit more aggressive on the button, as I expect people to not pre-bet enough, be folding too much. Oh, I think we might be good sometimes here. Yes, okay. So again, like we call the flop, right? I mean, it's a pretty easy call, but like people will not be putting you in tough spot. So like they just stab one time with a hand like 10, Jack 10, and then they just give up once they get called. So you get to realize your equity, you get to showdown, which once you start going higher and higher, like this happens a lot less, you know, like when you're facing a strong player, I mean, you're just going to put pressure and then like those marginal spots you don't really get to showdown with. So it's going to be much harder to realize your equity and all that type of stuff. Okay, so we're looking to 4-bet, get it in here. 140 is not great, but we're not folding kings. Again, like this board, he bets into two people. We have to take that into account. I mean, we don't have a diamond. We block like this hand actually blocks some some bluffs that he can have, like Queen 10, Ace 10, 9 10, which is not great. We're just gonna fold. I would much prefer calling a hand like Ace 8. And then he just snap calls. Like, if he had aces, would he really think about it? Like, should I jam? Should I call? Like, if he had like a really like hand, like maybe he can show up with aces here. But I mean, I think that's pretty unlikely, in the sense that he just snap called my 4-bet. Like, so it's a hand that like just fits into the 4-bet calling range, like pocket queens, ace king, pocket jacks. I'm just gonna be betting small again. It's a pretty locked down board, right? We have the king of heart, so we block some ace king of heart that he can have. Obviously, he can still show up with aces or 4 deuce suited, but it is what it is. Like, I want to be betting here. If he has queens, you know, like I don't want an ace to roll off, or even if we bink a king, it's not great. And if we bink a king, it's really not good. Unless he has pocket nines or pocket eights. Okay, so he folds. It opens 3.6. I'm going to be 3-betting here. Again, you get a worse price. I mean, once you start opening bigger, I mean, that's what we want, right? Like, if we open 2.5 with the antes, he's gonna get such better odds that's not what we want. So once we get a worse price on the call, we start 3-betting a bit more, because I mean, there's more dead money in the pot to go after. First of all, because of the antes, because of the raise size. So calling is a bit less appealing, and 3-betting is a bit more appealing as well. To take down the pot down and take the like 5 big blinds that were in there, this is great. Without a flop, seeing. This is pretty close. If we had backdoor flush draw, I would call. Yeah, I'm just gonna be folding here. If I were in position, I would call, but out of position, like, I would need backdoor flush draw to actually call there. I'm gonna be opening here. Again, like, this strategy seems quite effective in the sense that, like, I've been opening pretty wide and don't see a lot of how can I say it? Like, I don't see a lot of people pushing back. So I mean, just having the ante there is quite valuable to actually go after, because I mean, once you play quite a lot of hands, it starts making a pretty big difference. I mean, queen 4 off, I think that would be a bit too wide. Definitely opening with this guy. We'll call my 4-bet with Jack 7 suited. again, I'm going to be playing my hand, so I want a bit more fold equity, so I'm going to be sizing up. We have decent backdoors, which is great. Like I would prefer betting a hand like 6-7 before a hand like 9-10. I'm going to be betting aggressively here. He calls. I mean, the 5 is not that relevant. So like we talked in the last webinar, like if the turn, like if the board was Queen 9-5 or Queen 9 deuce and then turn is a 9, it's much more relevant. Now, yes, he's gonna have a hand like 7-5 suited 8, 5 suited ace 5, but it's less likely that he's gonna have a 5. Now, I want to be betting, do I still want to be betting hands like 7s, 8s? Yes, sometimes. So I still want to be betting fairly wide. So it's not like if the turn was a king, I mean, we're not betting a hand like ace 6 or pocket 7s anymore. Here, I wouldn't mind betting. So using a regular 2/3 sizing is totally fine. If you want to polarize yourself a bit more, we can go towards something like 90% or pot size bet, and then we can just bet something like a good queen or better. But I still think with the turn 5, we can still be betting a hand like pocket 8s for value and just checking back for protection. Here I'm just going to be checking. Again, like we can be face up with our betting range. So it doesn't need to make a lot of sense because people, again, will not notice that. But we have to keep in mind like what our default strategy should be. Let's do about another 10 minutes and then we can wrap it up. Ace Jack, we're going to open. Again, this is a board that we can see bet at a pretty high frequency. We have the ace of heart, which is great. We have top pair, top kicker. I'm going to raise for value here. Having the ace of heart means that we have a bit more equity because on some like turn heart, we have the nut flush draw. So having a bit more equity means that we can put more money into the pot. So I would raise a bit more with the ace of heart than without. And usually that's how solvers approach situations where when they have better equity, they are actually a bit more aggressive. So I'm going to be betting here for value again. Like he's going to have like king jack, queen jack, jack 10. Obviously, like if I get raised here, I would definitely be folding. Like if he actually dunked, that would have been a pretty nice hand to actually turn into a bluff and just jam blocking like, I mean, we don't really block jacks, shouldn't really have jacks there, but we block some flushes. But I mean, I'm just gonna check back. Like we even win against a hand like 4-5 that we were behind on the flop and the turn. ISO. It's quite different playing with the antes. Not sure I kind of like it, but I mean, I guess you guys have to deal with it because those are in the games now. If I take a look, it's up to, does 25 NL have antes? Yes, it does. And then 50 NL. No int yet, 50 NL. Alright, so we're going to be starting to turn our hand into a bluff, and I'm not going to be timing out this time. So I expect hands like ace king, king jack to call the turn from him. And then I would definitely be betting the river as well. Again, like it doesn't work that well as a one and done hand, because he's gonna have a bunch of king X in his range as well. But I'm gonna be betting turn and betting river. And then we put his like king 10, king jack, ace king into a really tough spot. I don't expect him to have much queen X, so we don't have to worry about that. And also we block the flush. He can have some flushes, but like again, he just checked back, so it's pretty unlikely. If you're facing a pretty good regular at higher stakes, you know, who thinks about his checking range a lot more, then he's definitely going to have hands like kings in his range. He's going to have hands maybe like a queen or a flush draw that checks back the flop. But at lower stakes, people will have much weaker checking range. So in general, we can put a lot more pressure versus them. Here I'm going to 3-bet. Again, there's more money to go after this time. This type of hand gets 3-bet sometimes. I'm gonna be calling. Like I want to be check raising, but I mean we have the board so crushed. We want him to get there if he has a hand like Jack X or a flush draw. Hopefully he bets again. Here I'm just gonna looking to check raise. He's gonna have a bunch of like ace X that he's just checking on the turn and giving up, because I mean it has some showdown value, so it kind of makes sense. And then he bets small. I'm gonna raise pretty damn big. Oops, not that. That's a bit too big. Okay, so we just that's what I wanted. He calls. Thank you. So he has ace-6. I mean, like, the thing is that, like, here, if I just bet or overbet the turn, he only calls always with his ace-6, right? So, if you want to maximize our value, yes, sometimes it sucks, right? Because he's going to be checking back. Like pocket sevens or whatever, or a bluff that he can have. But like once he has ace-x and he bet calls it to like a really big sizing, and we have to be checking there, looking to check raise to try to maximize our value. It kind of sucks once it checks back a hand like ace-4, right? But if you feel that he can go pretty wide for value or go for a thin value and all that, I mean, we just go for the check raise there. And at this particular like stakes, you know, like I would probably have zero bluff there, because I expect this guy to be calling ace-6 off. So that's why we raise big. That's why we don't really bluff. Because then you're thinking about, oh, okay, I have to like check raise some bluffs, and then he just snaps you off with ace-6, and you're like, damn, I'm retarded to try to bluff this guy. But don't worry, I dropped a lot of buy-ins bluffing people that I shouldn't have bluffed, but it's part of their learning process, which is cool because now you get to save money. My hotkey was on. I got pretty lucky there, because if I hit the R button, I would have jammed king 10 suited. But I clicked the F button, which is fold, which is the right thing I wanted to do. That's also maybe like if you play against me and you write down in the chat, you might add some EV by just writing something, because then if I forget to take my hotkeys off, then I just might misclick. We're gonna call here. Let's do like 1 or 2 more minutes and wrap it up. This 4 is going to be a fold. Here, I mean, it's quite close. I'm going to be 3-betting here this time. I mean, it's quite like it's bottom of my fold, the top of my folding range. But again, like we have like 2 more hands, so I'm going to be taking the more aggressive route here. Okay, what is he calling there? He's probably gonna dunk shove here. No, he doesn't. I'm not gonna bet. That was close. And he bets small, like leaving himself here. Like, is he really folding ever? Not really. This guy has a bunch of queen X in his range. Even a hand like ace 9 is a snap. Get it in versus this guy. I mean, once he starts folding there, I mean, that's pretty obvious. You're not folding. Again, this is a fold usually, but like I said, I'm going to be opening a bit wider. Okay. This could be a good or a bad turn. So he bets pretty big, so like everything gets there, he still bets pretty big. It's not great. I mean, we're not folding, obviously. We're not folding and hoping to bink a full house on the river. And we do, because I run pretty good. Hopefully I can run like this at higher stakes as well. Unless he has like pocket 3s or something, but I mean, it's just what it is. So again, like we're gonna take a bit of time. Like if we just snap jams here, if we just snap jam, I mean, we're basically saying that like we have a really easy decision. That kind of says that he folded, but yeah, so let's just sit out next big blind. Queen 10 off, we're not going to call. 5s, we're going to open. The bottom hands like deuces through 4s, like we don't open all the time under the gun. Just take a look into the player pool. If there's a weaker player in the big blind, then we can start opening a bit wide. With this short stack, 25 bigs, like opening smaller pocket pair is not great. Because you're going to get cold call here, and then he's going to cold call, and then you have 5s out of position. So unless you bink a 5, your hand is pretty much pretty much never going to get to showdown. Like if he bets here with this guy, like his range will be not super strong, but on the stronger side. Especially that he's short. So okay, here I'm just gonna exploitatively bet small. Then he snap calls and this guy folds. Okay, so I'm gonna be looking to check. If he bets, I'm probably gonna call. Yeah. Okay, so I'm not sure what you had, but anyways, guys, this was the second episode of Moving Up in Stakes, which was played at 10 NL. We covered some really interesting situations. If you have any questions about the video, make sure that you timestamp your question and put it in the forum. I'll be more than happy to answer any of you guys' questions. Hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll be talking to you soon. Good luck, guys.